Okay. So, you guys noticed that North Korea has been in the news a lot lately? A lot. They're really, really eager to let us know that they're there. So, real quick, we're going to watch a quick video on what North Korea is doing now. You know, they've been really ramping up their rhetoric as far as, how they're going to destroy the United States, they're going to destroy South Korea. I think they said they'd turn Seoul into a sea of fire. So we're going to look at just a quick video about what they're doing, and then I'll just have a few questions for you.
We just bought our first house.
We're not ready for spring.
Well, let's get you ready.
Very nice. You see the various colors?
Maybe a little bit over here.
This spring, take on more lawns for less.
Not bad for our first spring.
More saving, more doing. That's the power of the Home Depot.
Like many things that North Korea does recently, it's very difficult to read right now. We don't know if they intend to close this to South Koreans for an extended period of time, or if this is one of the games that North Korea is playing in the many games that it plays. Okay, I want you to take a look over my left shoulder. What this is the road leading into Kaesong. And take a look. What you're seeing are vehicles exiting the road out of Kaesong. Those vehicles that are led by a military van, a military jeep, those are workers. Those are South Korean workers exiting Kaesong. That is a plant that is has South Korean managers and North Korean employees. There were 81 workers scheduled to exit, but I'm only counting 1, 2, 3 vehicles that are leaving. From what we've heard from the Unification Ministry, what the government is saying is that workers are being allowed to leave today. North Korea has informed them they will be allowed to leave, but they're not being allowed to return as you watch this one vehicle go. So these workers are, again, South Korean being allowed to leave, but they're not being allowed in today. We saw a large number of South Korean workers, about 400 of them, who were trying to get to work today at the Kaesong Industrial Plant, Rosemary, and they were turned away. They were told that they couldn't go in. But again, very difficult to read right now whether or not North Korea is simply trying to make a statement today, or if this is something that we're going to see for an extended period of time. There are approximately, Rosemary, about 800 South Korean workers still inside Kaesong.
And Ken, what are those workers saying to you?
What those workers are telling us, and we've spoken to a couple of them, is they're very guarded right now. This is a place that they go to every single day. It is a joint operation. They work side by side with North Koreans, a very, very rare place in this peninsula, the only place on this peninsula. And what they're saying is that at this point, they're just hoping this is temporary. I mentioned that all this game playing is going on. They're hoping that this is one of those games. They're trying not to take it too seriously because they want to return there. This is a glimmer of hope on the peninsula that the Koreas will be able to work together, that there will be a peaceful future. So for this to not exist, for this to not run smoothly, certainly spells some bad times ahead. But again, we have seen some terrible games from North Korea in the last few weeks. This may just be one of them. North Korea has done this before. In 2009, it briefly closed this to South Koreans for a couple of days and reopening after that. So again, Rosemary, very difficult to tell what this all means.
Yeah, and Kyung, it's also worth noting that the Kaesong Industrial Complex, it does make a lot of money for North Korea. So why would it want to shut out South Korean workers? Presumably they are trained and needed and required.
Bingo. I mean, absolutely. Why would they want to do it? It does not serve their best interest. But when you are Kim Jong-un, when you are this regime, you only have a few cards to play in the deck. So they're going to play everything that they've got. This is one card that they can play. This is something that they can do to alarm the Korean government. Have they done their job? Well, they certainly did ruffle some feathers at the Unification Ministry today. We want to play you some sound that we heard from the Unification Ministry. Here's what they said.
오늘 아침, this morning, North Korea has informed us that it will suspend entry of South Korean workers, but allow them to depart from North Korea. Our government regrets that today's situation that the transit to the Kaesong Industrial Zone was not normal. Even North Korea's measure to suspend the industrial zone is an obstacle to the stable management of the zone. We urge the North to immediately normalize the access to the Kaesong Industrial Zone.
There were only about
Okay, so I'm just gonna stop it right there. So, you see what North Korea is doing is they're being belligerent. They won't really, it doesn't seem to listen to reason. This Kaesong industrial complex it's a joint run factory, as they explained, and just over the border in North Korea. And I remember when I was there that when North Korea sunk a South Korean warship, they didn't close the space. Now, they didn't close it in 2009, but I'm saying it seems like they're getting maybe a bit more serious. Also, for a country that is so destitutely poor, it seems like an odd thing they would close like what is really one of the largest contributors to their economy. Okay, so if you were, forgive the ducks, if you were President Obama or you were hypothetically in the U.S. Congress or part of the State Department, what measures do you think would be the best way to deal with a belligerent country such as North Korea? Just if anybody would like to chime in, we appreciate it. If not, I'll just call on somebody. Yes, Tom?
Maybe like block something economically from going into their country.
Good, so like economic sanctions.
Sure.
Good job, Tom. Okay, so just write it real quick. Economic sanctions. Does anybody else have any other ideas? Drew?
Nuclear weapons.
Nuclear weapons. Pretty quick, Drew. Going right for the jugular. So nuclear weapons. So just for conceptual symmetry, if we have economic sanctions, nuclear weapons would be what type of sanction or act? Economic, then
Military.
military. Thank you very much. Okay. Now, what about instead of? So we both of you came up with the idea of sanctions, things that we could do to harm them, so to speak. What about the other side of that coin? Instead of giving them the stick, what about offering a carrot or offering some sort of incentive? Yes, Caleb?
Sending over U.S. diplomats.
Yeah, so we'll say diplomatic entreaties. So maybe just trying to open up a conversation, talk to them more. Okay, so what about, instead of economic sanctions, what about something like economic aid? Do you think that would also be another? So we'll put, once again, for symmetry, sanctions aid. And another way could be possibly military aid, which, don't get me wrong, right now that seems absolutely insane, but humor. Okay, so now I want to split you up into two groups. Okay, and this is tied in because recently we've been learning about World War II. We studied some of the governmental types of World War II previously. This is going to tie in into more or less, this is going to go right up into this U.S. entry into World War II. Okay, so I have two pieces of paper. One of the groups is going to look up U.S.-Japanese relations, which is right here, from 1937 to 1941. I was going to maybe do it a bit of a broader scope, like, longer, maybe the entire 1930s, but this is already like 2.5 pages, and I figured it would really get up there if I kept getting into it. The other group is going to do the Lend-Lease Act of 1941, which looks at the U.S.'s diplomatic overtures to Great Britain before the U.S. was actually entered into the war. Okay, so I want you to just keep in mind the idea of economic sanctions, military aid, and diplomacy. And what we're going to try and figure out is what is the best way in terms of diplomacy to deal with countries like North Korea, countries that don't want to listen to the rest of the international community, countries that are just kind of trying to be a bully, trying to get their own way without trying to play ball, I guess, or trying to cooperate with the rest of the world. Okay. And also, while you're reading these, I want you guys to try and think when FDR, Mr. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and other members of the U.S. State Department were crafting these policies, what were their end goals? What were they really trying to accomplish? Okay, so I was just going to go right down the middle here. So this group, I was going to have you read about U.S.-Japanese relations. Okay, and what I was going to do is have you guys can choose. There can be 2 people reading and 1 person writing. Okay. Oh, Ms. Green, hold on a moment, please. I'll get to you guys in 1 minute. Okay, so if you guys would like to decide that amongst yourself, who will read and who will write, that's fine by me. Okay. Oh, and just please, if the person writing, 1 at a time, if you're telling me. So I have a list of pros and cons that I would like you to make after you're done reading. Okay, so you guys will be doing the Lend-Lease Act in 1941. Same rules apply. You'll have 2 people reading, just to cover the content, and then those 2 people, consecutively, one after the other, will tell the person writing what they thought the pros and cons were of the U.S. diplomacy. Okay, and you guys can pick who you want to read and who you want to write. It's an AP class. And if you guys have any questions about any vocabulary, please let me know. Well, in case there's, sorry, just to interrupt, in case there's any confusion, I was thinking it'd be the one you look at the pros and cons of the U.S.'s diplomatic efforts. So, like, the U.S. in their relation with Japan, when they enacted some of their economic sanctions towards Japan, look at the pros and cons of those actions. I mean, hypothetically, how did their diplomacy work? Do you think it was successful? A pro would be that maybe Japan's government became more moderate. The con would be that maybe Japan less moderate because the sanctions became more severe.
Yeah, do you have to write it down if we underlined it in the text?
Yeah, I would like you to. I know. But just please bear with me. Okay.
I would say it would be a con. Just because we're seeing, bundle products.
What was that?
You don't want to
be the writer.
There's no I in team, but I guess there is a me in team.
There is, and you're being very selfless, Tom. Thank you.
There's a me and Megan. And an I in Cassidy. Really?
Miss Green.
You need to get back on task. Oh, then you'll have to do that then.
I don't know if this is a pro or con, but American sold Japan the medals they used for war in 1937, but then they stopped it in 1939 because they didn't like it, and they were using it for war.
I would say that's a con because they want to react to
So
too well.
editing that, yeah.
What year was that?
1939.
Okay, so in this group, it looks like Tom's doing most of the work.
That's usually
20% of people
Do I have to move you, Miss Green and Miss Carr? Do I have to move you guys? Do you like sitting next to each other?
No, I don't
You
like
don't
it.
like it?
First place.
I like girls, but not these girls.
Give me a
Okay,
popcorn.
all right.
No, I got it.
I want right.
No, you didn't.
You
Okay, so then, earthly issues, then like a major opponent of Japanese expansion in East Asia. So, Japan,
Yeah,
these two events helped moderates in the Japanese
What's wrong,
government
Mr.
to
Carr?
gain more influence over foreign
I just
policy.
wish I could.
That's a
Oh.
pro.
Mr. Chambers, sorry.
Yeah, don't associate me with her because she stinks.
The medals.
I just
and
wish I
the
could say my girl right now.
Wait, how is that a
Well, you can.
Well, you could rather have honored
Okay.
have
So-
power.
Oh, rather than like crazy, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
When?
Good point.
In like 5 minutes, okay? All right, it seems like everybody's wrapping up. Do you guys need some more time?
Yes,
Yes.
just the one more minute.
Just 1 more minute? Okay, 1 more minute. Times 3. This isn't math class.
We're done. You need to hurry up. On. What does this word mean?
What is it?
Denoued?
No, that is not the French word for naked.
He's into nude.
It gives one man
Okay,
responsible
if
to no
you
one.
denude, you close, right?
No, that's not what it means. Denude our shores of every warship.
That's a quote, though.
Yeah, but what
Yeah, that's a quote from Senator Burton Wheeler of Montana.
Okay, so get rid of.
Denude.
You
Denude.
still didn't tell us what the word means.
Well, because I was trying to talk over everyone, talking about how it's about clothing. Denude, yeah, denude means to get rid of, or to. It's not the French word for naked.
Why
Well-
don't you just say the power to get rid of?
Yeah.
Well, because in the 1940s and 1930s, they were coming off the Great Depression, and lyrical richness was the only kind of wealth they had. So they had to be verbose, and they had to use big words because it gave them a greater sense of self-worth.
Does that mean you're from the Great Depression?
Well, sometimes I think I am.
Does that mean Wiz Khalifa was around then? Because he has lyrical richness.
I don't know who Wiz Khalifa is.
Okay, be
I
nice.
won't respond to that
Be nice.
because it's going to be my turn eventually. Okay, is everyone done?
Yes,
Please wrap it
I'm
up.
done. I'm so done.
Good.
I'm sorry,
Okay, so now what I want you guys to do is first just tell me a few of your pros and your cons and why you think they are pros and cons. Would anyone like to go first? Miss Green.
Lend-Lease formally eliminated any semblance of neutrality, and I said that's a con
Okay, why do you think that's a con?
because it made everyone not like each other.
Okay, so it eliminated neutrality. So it showed right away that the United States was not going to be neutral. It was going to be biased or prejudiced towards one government or another, towards one country or another. Good. Mr. Purcell.
We had that one of the pros is in 1941 America was negotiating trade agreements with Japan, which kind of delayed their military actions.
Yes, very good. Don, do you have anything you'd like to add? Okay, what's that?
Pro. Lend-Lease enable U.S. to lease naval bases. Like British naval bases.
Good. Well, why do you think that's a pro?
Because we're able to use their stuff.
Yeah, that was part of Lend-Lease. We lend, they lease. Elizabeth?
Pro or con?
Either. Whichever one you find more interesting.
Okay. We said it. A con was in 1939 they stopped exporting materials used for war.
Okay, why do you think that's a con?
Because I don't know. Why did we put this little con?
I'm just gonna guess that it kind of made their maybe some extremist reasons for war sound more
Favorable?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's very good. That's exactly it. Okay, so prior to World War II, we supplied Japan with a lot of their raw materials, a lot of their natural resources. I believe it was copper, iron ore, and tin. Could be wrong, but we also imported a lot of resources from Southeast Asia, which at the time was an area that Japan was looking to colonize. Okay, so by cutting off our trade with Japan and stop sending a lot of their raw materials, we made the more extreme elements within the Japanese government. It made them more favorable to war. They thought that that was a better path than peace. Now, what I want you to do is to trade your pros and cons lists. Actually, don't do that. Untrade them. I didn't even think that out. Okay, so now I want you guys to inform them about what you think the pros and cons, what you have written down for the Japanese-U.S. relations. You can inform them of the pros and cons. Then, you guys will do the same thing with Lend-Lease for them. Okay? Okay. Go for it.
So with U.S.-Japanese relations, they were basically fighting over the same markets in Southeast Asia. So you kind of took two different ways to this. They would either try to form trade agreements or economic sanctions. When they tried to do trade agreements, they led to moderates getting more influence in the Japanese government and delayed military action. So those are two pros. And when they kind of put on economic sanctions, like stop the metal and oil exports, it kind of fueled Japan's need for military action.
Okay, good. Did you guys write those down?
Oh, no,
No.
You're the writer.
That's okay. Could you please explain them again? I know. I'm sorry.
Okay, so the U.S. took kind of two ways to kind of improve their relations with Japan, since they're both fighting over the same markets in Asia. So they either tried to negotiate trade agreements and economic agreements, which led to moderates gaining more influence in the Japanese governments and delayed the military actions.
Moderates getting more power.
Yeah. And the cons are when the U.S. Put in place economic sanctions and stopped the export of oil and metal and anything else that could be used for war. Extremists gained more influence, and the need for military action became more imminent.
They stopped stuff that would be like war materials.
Yeah.
And that made them, Japan, want to go to war
Yeah.
more.
It avoided the prickly issue of post-World War I warheads.
Is that a pro or a con?
A pro, because we didn't have to be like all up in their business and that's back. And then
What did prickly what? Prickly men?
issue
Alright.
of post-World War I war deaths. And then a con was declaration of war versus Germany. Then when people died and stuff.
They totally died and stuff.
Not cool. And then it stripped the American Army of our every tank, cannon, rifle, or anti-aircraft airgun.
And that is the con, I'm going to assume.
Yeah, they took our amendment right thing where we can bear arms.
So they were there.
They were bearing arms.
And they were
But who said that? Do you remember where you got that quote from? You got those numbers from?
the Declaration of Independence.
Well, not the right to bear arms. And that's, the right to bear arms isn't part of the Declaration of Independence. I thought it was part of the Bill of Rights of the Constitution.
I don't know. I had this other history
Well, that's-
teacher.
Really? You're taking 2 history courses in 9th grade?
I make
Oh, that's great. Yeah. You totally did underline prickly issues. Oh yeah, the North Shores, yeah. Just real quick, if you are quoting Senator Burton Wheeler of Montana, he might not have been given an entirely truthful statement. Okay, it didn't take every single warship or every single cannon or every single firearm we had.
That's what he was afraid of, right?
Yeah. He was afraid of that, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen.
She wrote that
But
down.
it also would take
Oh,
away a lot of our, it would spread our stuff.
Our ability to defend ourselves is spread out. Yeah, that's true. However, it also industrialized our economy for producing machines of war. Because we knew we could start supplying and giving these things to the British, our economy went from being mostly a domestic peacetime economy to actually being a wartime economy before we even declared war on Nazi Germany or Japan. So I think that would be a pro. Alright, good. Okay, so now having made your list and seeing what you think works and what you think doesn't, what do you think the best way to deal with a country that doesn't want to cooperate with other nations? What do you think? Do you think that Mr. Purcell was right, going right at nuclear weapons? Let's just get them out of the way. No more North Korea, or at the time, no more Japan. So we have 1 vote for nuclear weapons.
Or between.
Well, I guess your other history teacher can talk to you about how that is. She is. Okay. Any other ideas?
I'd say economic aid or military aid, because it kind of strengthens the bond between countries
Good.
for us.
Good. And when we were giving aid to Britain, who were we really fighting against?
Germans.
Germans. So that video with North Korea earlier. What do you think is a way that we could put pressure on them internationally without actually, sanctioning them in any way? Anybody? Elizabeth? Do you have any idea?
I pass.
You pass? Okay. Ms. Carr?
Maybe give aid to countries around him.
Good, good. What countries are around North Korea that you know of?
South Korea.
South Korea, good. Good. Any other ideas? No? Okay. All right, well. So now, do you think those diplomatic measures worked? The ones we used against China or Japan and the ones we used against Germany? Do you think they were effective? Do you think they got the job done?
Maybe that's why Japan wanted to go to war, because they kind of had a desperate measure because of
The economic sanctions?
Yeah.
Yeah, very good, Tom. Yeah, so in some cases, so we cut off Japan from economic benefit from some of our resources. And we thought that that would make it much less likely that they would declare war. If we're taking away their iron and their oil, which are the two main resources used in building an industrialized army, we thought that, how could that lead to war? We're taking away the things they use for war. We were wrong. It made them attack us even more quickly because, they saw what the U.S. was doing with these sanctions, and they could see more or less at the time that the clock was running out. That if we kept cutting them off from all these resources, they knew that they wouldn't be able to sustain any of their military activity. Okay. So, good job, everybody. And